Our reading today comes again from Mark's Gospel. We've got the third in a series of 3 nature miracles, if you like. It began with Jesus calming the storm, so having power over the elements. And then we have an extended story of the man possessed by many demons and how Jesus casts them out into some pigs. So power over the elements, power over the spiritual. And now we have 2 healing miracles intertwined in the way that Mark sometimes likes to, of putting a story within a story. So this is Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 43, Jairus' daughter and the woman who touched Jesus' cloak. Jesus went back across to the other side of the lake. There at the lakeside, a large crowd gathered round him. Jairus, an official of the local synagogue, arrived, and when he saw Jesus, he threw himself down at his feet and begged him earnestly, "My little daughter is very ill. Please come and place your hands on her, so that she might get well and live." Then Jesus started off with him. So many people were going along with Jesus that they were crowding him from every side. There was a woman who had suffered terribly from severe bleeding for 12 years, even though she had been treated by many doctors. She had spent all her money, but instead of getting better, she got worse all the time. She had heard about Jesus, so she came in the crowd behind him, saying to herself, "If I just touch his clothes, I will get well." She touched his cloak, and her bleeding stopped at once, and she had the feeling inside herself that she was healed of her trouble. At once Jesus knew that power had gone out of him, so he turned round in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples answered, "You see how many people are crowding you. Why do you ask who touched you?" But Jesus kept looking round to see who had done it. The woman realized what had happened to her, so she came, trembling with fear, knelt at his feet, and told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "My daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your trouble." While Jesus was saying this, some messengers came from Jairus' house and told him, "Your daughter has died. Why bother the teacher any longer?" Jesus paid no attention to what they said, but told him, "Don't be afraid, only believe." Then he did not let anyone else go in with him except Peter and James and his brother John. They arrived at Jairus' house, where Jesus saw the confusion and heard all the loud crying and wailing. He went in and said to them, "Why all this confusion? Why are you crying? The child is not dead. She's only sleeping." They laughed at him. So he put them all out, took the child's father and mother and his 3 disciples, and went into the room where the child was lying. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I tell you to get up." She got up at once and started walking around. She was 12 years old. When this happened, they were completely amazed. But Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone, and he said, "Give her something to eat." There's an awful lot of thought processing and theology behind these readings, isn't there? Both Jairus and the woman come to Jesus in the expectation that they will get well. In the case of Jairus, it's his daughter, of course, not him, but pleading on behalf of another person who's seriously ill, coming on behalf of yourself, having suffered for so long and so much. But if I just get him, I will get well. So their understanding of Jesus is as a supernatural healer. I mean, Jairus, as an official of the local synagogue, had that particular barrier to him seeking help. His fellow religious leaders had threatened, challenged Jesus, were public enemies of Jesus, and yet in his own extremis with his daughter being so seriously ill, all of that, of course, melted away. Any possibility of healing and restoration was worth pursuing, and whatever the state of Jairus' belief, he went and he overcame those barriers, and he put himself earnestly in the place of someone who could possibly help somebody who he loved deeply. And that's very noble and worthy, isn't it? And the woman comes after spending all her money, exhausting all her earthly opportunities and possibilities. She comes to Jesus. If only I can touch his cloak, I'll get better. So they both come to Jesus and they both receive healing. In the case of the woman who touches Jesus' cloak, her understanding of who Jesus was gave her the courage to overcome such obstacles and seek help. But it was in her confession to Jesus of what she'd done, and she came trembling with fear, which was the key moment. At that moment, she stopped treating him like a healer and somebody who was greater and mightier than that, somebody who she could conceive had done something totally amazing for her. A bit like Thomas again in the upper room, my Lord and my God. Your faith has made you well. Not perhaps her initial questing of Jesus as a supernatural healer, but her understanding now that this was God in human form, and her understanding had restored her and given her the true life to live well and to be fully alive. And Mark is very clever with the story about Jairus, because Jesus goes with him and answers his initial request. But then, of course, people come and tell Jesus that the daughter had in fact died. And so the pursuit was worthless. The whole endeavour could go nowhere because death was final and there was nothing more anyone could do. Kind of echoing the woman's story about she'd gone to every doctor, exhausted every possibility. Death is an insurmountable problem. The little girl had died, so there was no need to bother the teacher any further. But Jesus will have none of that. And he asks Jairus and the little daughter's mother to come on the journey with him, a journey against all expectation, against all logic. He invites them to come along and trust him. And in casting out the mourners and in going into that room and then restoring her to life, no wonder they were completely amazed. And their understanding of Jesus must have been very similar to that of the woman. This is no mere healer. This must be God in human form. And it is that understanding that sets people free. And that, of course, is the link for you and I, because it doesn't matter how many books of the Bible we read or whether we believe in Jesus as a supernatural healer or a marvelous teacher or an Old Testament prophet or just a historical figure or even just, as I've heard some people say, a good bloke. It is the understanding, the revelation that Jesus was God in human form, that in seeing the words and the works of Jesus, we see all we can about God in this life. And we see unconditional love. We see power beyond our understanding. We see our expectations of the world turned on their head. We see a bigger vision of unity and of love for all people everywhere, which is way beyond our own natural understanding and our own natural inclination. We see, in short, a vision of the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And that is glorious and marvellous and transformative. And that vision is then meant to inspire something in us. That understanding is meant to inspire action. It's meant to inspire us to serve others, and witness to others, to proclaim to others the impossible things, to surprise them by our willingness to go the extra mile, to walk with them, even though they think our journey is pointless, that there is no ultimate end, that there is no salvation to this problem that they may have. But to walk alongside, as Jesus did with Jairus, to walk with, as he did with the woman, and to provide an inspiration, a revelation of God's love in our words, but more importantly in our actions. How will each one of us take the knowledge of God's love and use that to transform their worlds, to make them see, to make them glimpse the kingdom of heaven here on earth? These opportunities will come. Praise God that we will be able to see them and take advantage of them. But as with everything, it all starts with the transformation of our own hearts and minds. It all begins with us truly understanding how loved we are by God and how amazing is the God who made us and all things.